Welcome to another episode of Momentos Voices. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I have the pleasure of having two very special guests with me, the host of the JK But Gay show.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, yes, we're excited to be
Thank you so
here.
much for being here. I'm super excited to have you both here.
Yes.
I think just as a quick intro, what you guys are doing is something amazing. One, if not the only Latino gay podcast show in our area for sure.
Yes.
Maybe possibly in the state of Texas. We're not 100% sure about that, but let's just say that you are.
Today we are.
For today's sake.
So thank you so much. I think it's great, especially this month. You know, it is Pride Month.
Yes.
And so I think it's very important that we still have shows that empower that and that really tell these stories that are often go untold. So
Right.
thank you so much for putting yourselves out there, because trust me, I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk all about that, how you guys started the podcast, but I do want to get to know y'all first,
Yeah.
Individually, and then y'all can
Okay.
tell me how y'all became co-hosts and friends, and about the amazing work that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So let's start with Jake.
Always start with a J.
Yes, J and then K. Always.
Perfect.
Yeah, so-
Jake, tell me a little bit about you. Where are you
Yes.
from? What you do? Who are you?
Yes, mysterious. I'm a mysterious man. No, Jake Reyna-Casanova. Thank you for having us.
Of
I'm super
course.
excited to be here. So in my day job, I work for a healthcare organization. So healthcare in general is like my area of expertise.
Okay.
It's a nonprofit, so it's like the grant management, healthcare administration, making sure operationally it works well.
Okay.
In a nutshell, that's kind of like what I do.
Okay.
And so I've been in the nonprofit world for what year we at? For 9 years already. I can't believe that. Sometimes I'm like, I still feel young.
are.
I am. But yeah, so I do healthcare in general is my passion. As it relates to really everything healthcare related. But I have my undergrad. I went to Austin at UT.
Okay.
Got my undergrad there, and then I went to UT Health in Houston, and I have my master's in public health. So yeah, education is really important to me. So I definitely wanted to get as much education as I can, despite Kendrick calling me dumb sometimes.
We're talking positivity today. We're not talking about that.
No,
The
it's
truth
all,
comes
it's
out.
all
The
out of
truth
it's all
comes
out of love. No, but yeah, it's really important to me. So that's
awesome.
why I wanted to continue. And I know you'll talk about your education as well. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me, like education and work wise. And I'm born and raised in San Antonio,
Okay.
so San Antonio native. It's been my home, despite doing my little trek around Texas. Like I lived in Austin, lived in Houston.
Okay.
Now back in San Antonio, which is home for me. My whole family's here. My husband's family's here. So it makes it all the more.
You know, I hear
all
that
the
a
merrier.
lot. I wasn't born in San Antonio. I was born in Mexico City, but I grew up in New Braunfels.
Oh,
And
yes.
I hear that a lot from people that are San Antonio natives. I used to work at a school district, which in the South Side, and there was so many people that grew up in the district and then either went off somewhere, but always ended up back in San Antonio. And I kind of feel like that's your story. I hear that a
is,
lot
yeah.
from people that are born in San Antonio. It's almost like we have to go back to San Antonio. Like it calls you back.
Almost, yeah. And I think it's like it's definitely the culture, but also like I know we've talked about like the Latino culture, like it's so family oriented, and I feel like that's what San Antonio really is. And so for me, it was for both my husband and I. We were living in Houston for a while, and we loved it,
Okay.
but we were like, San Antonio's home. Like let's go back home. So yeah, we came back here, and we love it. Like this is our home for
That's
sure.
awesome. That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank
I'm
you.
super excited to get to know you a little bit more.
Yes.
This is the first time we're meeting in person.
Yes.
Although I feel like I've known you because I've been listening to your podcast. So.
You'll get to know me a little bit more, even better today.
So thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you for having me
And
again.
of course, Kendrick, the Kendrick.
I was like, again, thanks for having us.
Of course.
Kendrick Vela. I am the K in the JK But Gay show.
Yes.
I am originally from West Texas, which I talk about a little bit on the show about how growing up in a conservative environment, how it sort of impacted me and made me the person who I am today.
Yeah.
But I went to school here in San Antonio. Undergrad, I went to St. Mary's, and then lived in DC for a little bit, got my master's there, and lived in DC, then lived in Houston. But similarly, I actually came back because San Antonio just felt like home for me. It's not where I'm originally from, but it's where my husband and I feel most connected to our community. And so that's why sort of we're here and why we've decided to call this beautiful place home. So yeah, that was, I think I went through that really fast, but
Right. I was like,
but
oh my
yeah,
God, I took more.
was
that's
a
me.
quick
So
summary.
this is my best friend. We're best friends who started a show because if we're gonna dive into that already, I'll just go right in.
I want to know how y'all met. How did you become best friends, and then how did you end up having the idea of having a podcast and all of that?
Yeah. So on the very first episode of our show, we talk about how we met, and we met because Jake was taking headshots of us.
That's right.
I was a part of a leadership program, and Jake was taking headshots for us.
Episode, but yes.
And so I told Jake, I was like, when we were leaving, I was just kind of chit-chatting with him. I was like, oh, he seems really nice. I want him to be my friend. I was sort of chit-chatting with him and was like, hey, when you edit my picture, make sure I look good. And he took that literally and edited a picture of me and made me look like Facetune times a million.
Right.
And so I didn't talk to him for about 6 months after that because I was like, he's a villain. He is a hater. He doesn't want me to win in this world. But that was just the start. And then in the summer, we were friends on Instagram. And then it just started like, hey, let's go on a double date. And we became best friends after that. Like really, really fast. It was really fast. Nice. We traveled together like a month after we met. We went to LA together.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super quick. And and like knowing when I first met Kendrick was online.
Okay.
I know we talked about it on the show, but it was a Zoom meeting. He was interviewing for the program that I had already done.
Okay.
And he was trying to get into it, get into the program as well. And from the moment or when we interviewed him, I was like, oh, like he's a good one. And I was like, he's extremely smart and like he's on point. Even though like I know you mentioned like that wasn't even my best one. I was like, I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
But I think from that moment on, I was like, also like, I want to be his friend. He's so cool.
Did we just become best friends?
Right.
I know.
And then I messed up a photo, which neither here or there at this point. But and then it just like it really was just as Kendrick mentioned, like we were messaging on Instagram for a while, and then it's like let's go to brunch one day. And then, like from then on,
let's
it
go
was
to
like,
LA together.
Literally,
and
because that's the next step.
That's what you do next.
You go to brunch and you go to LA.
Exactly. You go to brunch and then you go on
I'm thankful
a flight.
for leadership programs. I think we probably wouldn't have met otherwise. And I think that's what I left off in my intro. I'm like, why was that so fast? So I work in communications now. I've worked in communications for about 10 years. Used to do a little bit more crisis communications, still do that, but more in strategic comms.
Okay.
So yeah, I work from home. My job is based out of DC, but I get to work from home and have the wonderful benefit of not being in traffic and having to worry about any of that. But so it's we're both in a, I think we're both in a place in our career. We're both in a place in our career where we felt like, we are really great at our jobs and we really love what we're doing. But we were ready for something. I was ready for something different, and we talked. It actually came out of nowhere. I think we were just talking about podcasts in general, and I sent him a clip like, hey, we would be, because he and I have a certain banter with each other that is different than like anything I've ever had with the friendship. Nice. Like I can look at him and we can look at each other and know exactly what the other one is saying.
That's awesome.
Like we have that type of friendship, and I'm like, I wonder if other people would think this is funny too. Right. Is like where that thought started. And so that's when I reached out to him and said, I sent him a clip of some banter, two co-hosts that had really good banter together. And I said, we're just as good as them.
Yeah.
We could just be this good. And he was like, actually, I would love to start a podcast with you.
Oh,
yeah.
And it happened
Very
like
out of
that.
nowhere,
And
too.
so the next time I saw him, in being the person that I am, I had a full proposal for you on Google Drive. I had a full proposal.
Of course
I know my
you
best
did.
friend, so I knew that I had to have like the amount it would cost, the amount of time that it would take, and everything. I was like, the only thing we don't have, and we came up with the name right then and there within the first week.
Yeah.
We were sitting down at a table when I was like, maybe this works, maybe that works. And then we came up with the JK Book Gay Show. And I was like, this is branding 101. I love this. And it's been amazing ever since. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but.
No, I love that. And it's funny that you said you had a full proposal, because I was going to talk about that.
Yeah.
I know that you guys are both very educated, but I've had 12 episodes at this point now. And you are the first guest that I have had who's sent me like 30 questions and like, so how is it going to be? Is it going to be like this? Is it going to be that? And I was like, yep, that's Kendrick.
So you know what it really...
But I mean it in a good way, which is awesome because that speaks a lot about who you are, how prepared you are, your education, I was like, yep, that's awesome. Like it kept me on my toes. Like I gotta have some good answers for this guy.
Well, and I think that's a lot about like my PR background because, and I think I
Right.
told you before I take it to him, I have to have all these things answered because I know the first things that he's going to ask me. So that's my background. You know,
I love
I've
it.
done PR for you know,
It's in your blood.
yeah. It's what I've trained for. And so I was like, these are all the questions. Like with you, if it was just me and you, I'd have been like, I know Mariana. I know that anything she has will be game. Let's do it. Let's make it work. But I know that I had to have like all these questions ready. So that's why I'm here justifying myself why I'm such type A.
We're both type A,
but
for
that's
sure.
But that's what it was. Is I was like, all right, before this, here are all the
Yes.
questions I need to know to make sure that it fits, and it did. And so I know we're both really glad to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This is awesome. And I think, like I said at the beginning, I think it's a great idea what you guys are doing. I think it really puts the name of San Antonio out there, one, for starters, which is great. I think we need more positive things out there.
Yes.
But two, it really opens up a whole other door into the LGBTQ zone, you know?
Yeah.
I've had a few people come on the show, and specifically one of them that I'm thinking about is one of my really, really good friends. And he had a really hard coming out story, you know, and he's a wonderful human being, one of my most favorite people in the world. And obviously he's doing so much better now. His family is so much better, but it was that whole thing of coming out and it being really hard on him. It's Dr. Kenny's story if y'all want to listen to it. But
I think I watched that episode with the glasses.
yes.
Yeah, I've seen that episode.
Yeah, he's wonderful, and it was very touching. Even though I've known him for years, when we had the opportunity to speak here, he opened up about a lot of things that I maybe knew but didn't really put the
Connecting the
connection,
dots,
right?
yeah.
And so I do want to speak a little bit about that individual, if y'all don't mind,
Yeah.
especially since it's Pride Month, and I know that a lot of people out there, even though we are in the year 2025,
You think, right?
it's still very hard on some people, you know.
Yes.
And I think it goes both ways. I think it's important to say. I just had a guest last week we spoke about how he respects his parents' opinions, but he asks his parents to respect his opinions and his way of life, right? And I think it's very important to touch on both sides. Like, if you don't agree with it, that's okay, but I need you to respect my lifestyle. And so anyways, before we get into all of that, I do want to know a little bit about each of y'all's coming out stories, specifically since it's Pride Month and because you'll have the JK Gay Show.
Yeah. Before we dive in though, I wanted to touch on one thing, and and it can transition to that, but the genesis of the show, and I think what it really started with is that I realized that a lot of people who are not a part of the community have no idea what goes on in the community, and it leads to a lot of misunderstanding. And so I've actually been really surprised by the amount of people who are not a part of the community that have watched the show and have said they've been learning from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that's been really interesting for us. That wasn't our primary audience, but our primary audience was for the LGBTQ community, specifically Latino gays, because what we had seen very early on, a lot of people tell us all the time, like when we hang out with them, are they like, how are y'all friends? Like,
Right.
A lot of gays don't make friends with each other, and it's because it takes a lot of things. It takes vulnerability, it takes honesty, it takes a bunch of things that as gay men we're not necessarily taught, and we're actually even preconditioned to not trust people because of the way that we had to grow up, right?
Right.
And so we had so many people that were telling us, and I remember we traveled to Monterrey together, and there was someone that said, like a friend that we were hanging out with, that said, like, how do y'all, like, are y'all so cool with each other? Like, because I can't make friends anyway. And so that's why we started the episode with that, with talking about how we became friends and how just as a community, we should be making friends more with each other and even just having these vulnerable conversations. And I think what I've seen too is even in the comment section of some of our TikToks is like, there's so many people that don't have conversations. They're just dying to start having these conversations, right? Like, I'm like, wow, you can tell that no one has ever asked them how they felt about the certain thing, and because some of the things we talk about are incredibly triggering. I think in talking about our coming out stories, which we'll get into in just a second, it's triggering stories because people hear certain things. And even like what you were mentioning just now about the respect on both sides, that is incredibly triggering. And we can talk about that in just a second, but that's incredibly triggering for folks too, because they're like, what do you mean? I'm the child.
Right.
Like, I'm the child. But then what I was saying at the time for mine was like, well, but that doesn't mean that I don't want a relationship with my parents. So I think that, Jake, you want to start about your coming out story first?
Yeah. And no, and piggybacking off of what Kendrick was saying, like that, we were very intentional as far as like the reasoning of why we're wanting to do our show. And it's all of what you said plus more.
Yeah.
I think like plus everything that we're going to talk about for this entire season. But yeah, no, thank you for bringing up this topic. I think it's very important now, especially more than ever, especially what's going on politically. Also, it's there, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't
Avoid
say
it.
that it's not. Thank you. Yeah. I was like, I can't think of the word. We can't avoid it. Like it's loud. It's not loud in the way that we want it to be, which it is what it is, and it's not what I would like to say, but like just the stuff that's happening politically and like in our communities, like it's harmful for people that are like us. Yeah. And from my perspective, I am very strong, and I have friends like Kendrick where like we can lean on one another, but not everyone has that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, like as far as it goes with friendships, or even like being with you, Mariana, like with the show, like giving us this opportunity and this platform to like share our own stories. I'm really hopeful that somebody else can benefit from it and understand, like sometimes or maybe all the time. Like I know with both of our stories, but sometimes it's going to be a bumpy road, but it can get better, and it will get better. And I think that's the moral of a lot of our stories and coming out stories. And I know some are very traumatic, and that is absolutely like the lived experience of that individual. But like, I hope that they know like there is someone there that can help you through all of that. And I know for me, as far as like my coming out story, I know we talked about this on our show, like we had to define what coming out meant. Like I still come out now.
Yeah.
Like there are times where like I'm at work and I'm like, well, I think I carry myself where people will know, and that's fine. But for me, it was coming out to my parents. Like that moment was going to be like, this is when this is me coming out.
Yeah.
Everything else, it's going to happen. But that was like, for me, the first initial part of my coming out story.
Right.
And I had a boyfriend for what time, how many months? Like 6 months already.
Wow.
And I hadn't come out to my parents yet.
Okay.
And I felt like there was a dishonesty part of me, or me being dishonest to him, and my parents. Like I did feel bad. Like I want to be able to share this information with them. I want to be able to share my life with them. And that's kind of what led me to eventually come out to them. And it took that long, I think, also because of the courage. Like I had to get the courage to come out to them. I didn't live with them at that point already. I was already in college. So there wasn't necessarily that fear of like, which is a very true and valid fear of like being kicked out of one's home. Yeah. But there was that part of me where I was like, I don't know how my parents are going to react. Are they going to love me afterwards? That was absolutely there. And when I came out, I was in the band at UT, and I was getting ready for the football game of that night. And my parents would always come up to Austin and be there with me, and they supported me for a lot of it, and I really appreciated it. And I remember sitting them down, and I was like, I need to come out to y'all together. Or they didn't know this, but I was like, I need to come out to them together. Cause like I cannot do one and then the other. Right.
Yeah.
Cause then that's going to be like 2 hits. Like I'm just like, I just wanted one and done.
Sure.
So I came out to them, and I forgot to mention it. My dad was very religious, and that's a huge component of it all, because I was scared of that. Like I was scared that he was going to feel some way because of the religion. I grew up Catholic. I grew up in the church with him. A huge part of our upbringing, specifically with him. And my mom wasn't necessarily religious. She didn't really go. She was like a CEO Catholic, like Christmas, Easter, and as others.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. She only went on like the major holidays. Others as a sign type of deal. So I wasn't necessarily worried about her. But then when I came out, my dad was completely okay with it. And he was definitely the one that gave me, like, he was my rock, I will say.
Wow.
Which was very surprising for me.
Yeah.
But my mom, I had a pretty rough time with her. There was I would talk to my mom all the time. And then after I came out, she mentioned to me, she was like, I'm upset. I don't know what to do with this. And I'm like, I don't really know what to
What do you want me to do about it?
Right. I was like,
Let me call my mom.
Right. And I was just like, I don't know. And I now that I think about it, I'm like, I think I said sorry. I don't know why. Cause like I was just being myself.
Natural,
so
yeah.
it's like, I don't know, but we didn't talk for like 3 months, and then we went on a trip to New York, and then I will, the one moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like my mouth was on the floor was when we were in New York, and it was just her and I. Like we had planned this trip for a while, and I was like, okay, we're still gonna go. And we were sitting down at a restaurant and in New York, so like everyone's basically on top of one another.
Yeah.
And she mentioned, or I was mentioning to her, like, what's gonna happen when I bring a boyfriend home, and also like note that I had a boyfriend, so like I had already envisioned like what it's gonna be like what is how when I bring him around, like how are they gonna react?
Yeah.
And I remember my mom told me like, well, just don't come home. And so that was like probably the lowest part of everything. Like it was one thing to not be able to talk to my mom, but like when she said that, that like broke me. And I remember like crying in the middle of the restaurant, and I was like, I just want to go back to the hotel. But also like my mom didn't know the subways it's like I did, so I was like, I can't leave her. Like, so then we ended up going back to the hotel, and like all that happened. But it took another like 3 months to finally something else happen. Or like between my boyfriend at the time, who's not my husband, something happened between us, and we were like, we didn't know if we were gonna last or like we were gonna break up. And then of course, being 21, we were like, I'm like, the world is ending. I'm gonna break up with this person, and like, oh my gosh. So then I called my mom, like naturally, and she helped me through it. And then she actually came to Austin, and that's when I realized like, okay, we're gonna be okay. Like and then she also talked to me about the reason why she was reacting the way she was. Like it wasn't necessarily because of me, but it was because of the way she felt that society would treat me. She thought I was going to get less opportunity.
Just cared for you.
Yes. And I think
those are valid,
which are very valid, because it happens. It happens, unfortunately. A lot and not just LGBTQ community, but like all disenfranchised groups, like it's just, that's the way it is. Like, as I don't say that because I'm like, it is the way it is, but it's not something that I agree with. But yeah, like she was nervous for me and nervous for me, not sad about who I was. Sure. And I think if she would have said that from the very beginning, that would have been very helpful.
Right.
But I looking back, I can respect what happened. And I think also ultimately, like indirectly, my mom helped me recognize like I have to love myself first. That way I'm able to say now, like, okay, if you don't respect me, then I know that that's not on me. Like I am the way I am, and you either take it or leave it. And if you don't, that's not a me problem. So indirectly, I think she helped me kind of understand that and like made me stronger. And I am a lot like my mom, I feel. Like looking at it, I am a lot like my mom as far as like I'm very tough on myself. I'm very type A, perfectionist type of person. But yeah, like all of that kind of that coming out story. Sure. It for me, it was, it was tough. I'm not gonna lie, it was a rough 6 months patch of time. But there were some silver linings and some glimpse of
growth opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. Sure. During those times. And now like my mom and I have a really great relationship. But yeah, I think that's the biggest coming out portion, or that's the coming out story for me.
The main one.
Yes. Although I know there are other, when I came out to my best friends and cousins, but those were not that they weren't important, but
you had already taken that first step.
Yes.
The biggest step.
The biggest one, which was my parents. And now we're good.
That's so funny. And I don't mean to say funny, but I think it's interesting. I've never thought about that. The fact that there's so many coming out stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Within one person.
Yes.
And it makes sense. Though, I mean, I don't know why I hadn't thought about it. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a constant daily thing because you're constantly meeting new people, and
right.
I don't have to deal with that, but I'm obviously, I know that you guys do now, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't come natural to me, which I apologize for that.
No, I don't think
that's not your lived experience.
Yeah, I don't think you have to apologize. I appreciate it, but like even now, there are times where I'll go into a space and I don't necessarily see it as coming out per se. I've gotten to that point. I think some people may feel like they constantly have to come out.
Yeah.
But I think I'm really secure with who I am, like with my husband. Like I will go into a space and not be afraid to be like, oh yeah, this is my
This is
husband.
me, or hide it, or this is my friend.
Right. Oh my gosh.
none of
yeah.
that.
Never. Like if someone calls my husband my friend,
Also,
which has happened recently, and I'm like,
could you hide it if you wanted to? Let's
Probably
be honest.
probably not. But I even more so, I like embrace it, and I will be like, this is me. I have like my iPad, like at work, for example, I have my iPad and like the stickers on it, all pride.
Nice.
All rainbows. And I don't try to hide it. I'm just like, I am who I am. And if you have a problem, that's on you. Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my long-winded.
Well, and something else that I
like
wanted
a
to touch on is I think a very similar common thing from at least from some of the stories that I've heard is also the fact that most of the time parents are not mad at you, or their feelings are not geared towards you per se.
Right.
They're geared to society, and like they're more scared than anything, right? Like they're scared of what's gonna happen to you. They're
Yeah.
scared of how people are gonna treat you. They're worried that you're never gonna get married, or they're
Right.
worried that you're never gonna be able to have kids, or like the stereotypical things that society has said it's normal, which is
Right.
not. But and I think that's also something that the more I hear coming out stories, it's a common theme.
Yes.
For the most part. I mean, I know there's some
No,
radical
it
things.
is a very
It's
But
very
a
much a
common
common thing, and I think one thing that I would add to that is that I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't hold our parents accountable in those
True.
situations, because it is their responsibility as parents to adjust for their children or even learn more about their children, because we didn't put those expectations on them, they put it on us.
Yeah.
Right.
And I talk about that, and I think to go into, do you have anything?
No, that
To add to our coming out story, one thing as a bad PR person that I forgot to do was to plug that you can find us everywhere at JK But Gay Show. Because, and I say that because we have had different coming out stories, probably the last 3 episodes.
literally.
And we have an episode specifically about coming out,
Yeah.
but then we have an episode about growing up. And I talk about how I came out to a priest. And then I have another one of family, which we just released this past, or we're going to release this week, where I talk about coming out to different members of my family. So the coming out never stops. It's something that continues.
Right.
And when you start a new job, it's something you have to worry about being affected. Now it's
Yep.
illegal to fire someone for their sexual orientation, but it doesn't mean that behind the scenes we're not thinking that. So you have to be
Right.
very careful about those things as well. And so so like I said, you can on all platforms at JK But Gay, anywhere you listen or hear, you can see hear our full coming out stories, because they continue to evolve
Sure,
and grow
sure,
as we
of course.
continue. But one thing that one story that I think is probably the most relevant for Pride Month is my coming out date to social media, right?
Mm.
Because for social media, I'd already come out to my family, to my immediate family, to my parents, and my parents were kind of stoic about it. They weren't yes, they weren't no. They were more on, my mom told me, we don't understand, but give us time. And at the time, it was incredibly heartbreaking to hear that. But now it was like, okay, I understand. Like, I can't expect them to overnight, be okay.
Right.
But we've had conversations since then about, what that time did to me and how it made me feel, and how, and the apologies have been issued and everything. And I'm super close to my parents. So it's been, really, really great to kind of have that story. But I think my coming out on social media for me, because I was coming out to so many people, I was like, I just want to put it somewhere and then everybody just know. You know what I mean? So I don't have to keep, and it doesn't mean that I didn't stop.
Keep telling people over and over and
Right,
over again. It
right,
makes
right.
sense. That's pretty smart, actually.
Right. So I came out. Right. She said, "You're really smart." Right. I agree. But no, I came out on social media on June 11th, 2016. So it was 9 years this past week. And I sort of posted on social media here at our strip. We have sort of like the wings,
the
that are on the
wings.
wall, and I took a picture there with like. It was super dramatic, right? That's so dramatic.
Head down. I'm
I like with the my head was down, a full thing, and I posted the picture, and everybody knew sort of at that point.
Okay.
But I tell the story on the show is that night when I woke up the next morning, I woke up to the news of the Pulse nightclub shooting, and so I was quickly reminded. In Pulse nightclub shooting, I think for everybody in the community, because it did happen at a gay club. It is at the time it was the deadliest mass shooting in American history. And, it was geared at our people. And then it was Latino night that night. So it was directly geared at people like us that listen to the music that we listen to, that come from the same background that we come from. And so it was incredibly traumatizing for me, that moment, and the way that people reacted after that moment too, and just the way they felt. So I was quickly reminded, even though I'd come out the night before, I was reminded the next day just how scary it is in this world and how much there are people that really just don't agree with our life, because you know, a lot of folks say, you know, like lifestyle, but it's not, we didn't choose this. Like no one chooses this life, right? Why would anybody choose? Now we love it,
right?
And we absolutely we embrace it, and it's who we are, but it's not something someone's lifestyle is if they like to do fitness, right? Like, no, we can't change this part of us that we have. And so we've been kind of like educating a lot on the show, and that's what this is for. That's what we're doing this for, is to educate ourselves. We're learning so much about, you were telling about like the stories of your friend where you had no idea those stories. We're always together, and there were stories that we were telling that I'm like, oh, we've never heard that before. Yeah. We were, I mean, just this past weekend, we were kind of going over an episode and figuring out what direction we were going to take it. And I was like, does anybody know this? And he's like, no one knows this. And I'm like, awesome. Okay, well, so it's been very therapeutic. And so, but to touch back on coming out, I think everybody has a lot of similarities in coming out stories, but each coming out story is unique to the person, and the reactions are unique to the person. But we notice a lot of things that are common in the Latino community when they come out specifically. I think one thing that I touched on the show is that moms usually take it harder than dads do, and what we've seen in the Latino friends that we have.
Okay.
I think I don't know if we've ever pinpointed it, but
I think it was like the culture, like the machismo culture.
Yeah, but
is probably one of the main
because you would think, right, like the dads would take it harder.
The man is the manly, and
right? You think the machismo would take it over, but my mother took it hard. I know my mom took it. I think my partner talked about on his episode, since he's been here before, that his mom took it much harder, and that's just the way that we've seen it a lot of things. And I think it's, I don't know, I think parents mistakenly put a lot of expectations on their kids that they shouldn't. And it's not our responsibility to fulfill those expectations, but it doesn't mean they don't do it anyway. And I talk about this in the show, that like from the moment you're born, your parents have this image that they create of you, of who they want you to become. You're a mom. I'm sure that you're like,
100%,
I just want them to be happy. But I think but I do think that the best part though is our generation is just like, I just want my child to be happy. I know you. I know that in your core,
100%.
like you're just like, I just want my child to be happy.
Right.
But when we were growing up, it wasn't necessarily like that. It was like, I want you to be happy, but make sure that all these things are checked along the way.
What society says is the right thing to do.
Yes. Right. And it doesn't mean that you can't be all of those things, but just not in the way that they thought you would. Exactly. And so it takes a lot of understanding. It's funny because when I posted that on social media, I got a lot of backlash on that. Do you remember?
Yep.
When I had a lot of younger gay men that were like, no, it's the parents' responsibility to, you know, and they were right, honestly. But I think at the time, what I was saying is that that's what I needed to help me in my situation. Yeah, right. I needed to give my parents space and time. And now I probably wouldn't give them that space and time because I'm, you know, much more secure in that. But at the time, it's what we needed. We grew together and we were able. So that's what I mean. Is like when you're listening to our show, there are pieces that you can take from it where you'll say, I can use that, but it's not Bible. Not what we're saying. These stories aren't for everybody, and they're not. They're just to open our eyes and start conversations. That's our goal for here, is just to start conversations. Because, like I said, a lot of people aren't having these conversations, and even my brother called me after the coming out episode and was like, "We've never discussed this. Like, you and I need to have a conversation about this
let's go have a drink and talk about this."
Yeah, let's have a conversation because I need to talk about how traumatic it was for and he was. You're gonna hear a part in an episode that will probably be released by the time your viewers see this, but. Where my brother talks about how traumatizing it was for him to kind of just like have to defend me in front of like everybody else, and to kind of always have this image of your parents, but then having that switch on a dime when you realize that they're, you know, coming after your siblings. So, but he was doing, you know, what my parents told him to do, is to protect your siblings. So anyway, we've all grown since then, but everybody's coming out is unique to them. Yep. But we just hope, you know, and you're listening to our show, that both if you're a part of the community, that, you know, it helps you. If you're not part of the community, that it helps you understand what people go through. And it's not, I mean, you look at Jake and I, we hardly, you know, need sympathy, right? We are two successful Latino men.
Secure,
and so we don't need that, but it's about starting these conversations. That's hopefully what we're doing.
I'm sure, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm sure it wasn't always like that. I'm sure y'all had to get to a point to where you build up that security and
absolutely.
That, that understanding of yourself, because I think that's huge too. Like, I mean, for me, like I learn something new about myself every day. Now that I'm a mom, oh my God, that's a whole other episode. But
Right.
To the most beautiful child in the world.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I remember the first time I saw your child, and it's not what we're talking about here, but I was like, you know, people like, okay, you're talking about expectations with your kid. I'm like, I can't have kids because what if my kids are ugly? That's a bad thing. And you have the most beautiful
All
child
kids are beautiful.
in the world. They are, but you have to wait till they're a certain age. Like this child was born beautiful.
Thank
Like
you.
those beautiful eyes. And we didn't come to talk about this, but I tell you this every time I see you, you know this, or I tell your husband too, and he's like, thank you.
so much.
But,
She's a cutie pie.
Yes.
But yeah, we
She's
just
the love
hope.
of my life.
Yeah, and a lot of parents are listening too. A lot of young parents.
Right,
I think last week is probably we've been having. I'm a crybaby. I cry for everything.
Yeah.
Jake doesn't. Jake is kind of like, it's okay, don't cry. But
I'm like, please stop.
I had someone reach out to me and say, you know, because of your show, I'm creating a safe space for my child who's experiencing some of the things that you're describing.
Wow.
And I remember I sent it to you. Yeah.
Yes,
I sent
those
it to you,
comments
and I was
mean
just
everything.
like, I was like, I'm so emotional right now.
Yeah.
I've been.
That's the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's if you can change one life, you know.
Yeah.
And my last guest also talked about how one time they came up to him at a place, and this lady told them like, since you've come, because he's a public figure, right? And so a lot of people know him. And they recognized him at a casino or something. And the lady said to him, you know, I was very scared for my son because he's gay, and I thought he was pretty much gonna be a no one. But now that I see you came out and see how successful you are, and that you're an educated man, and that you're a wonderful person, now I have hope for my son. And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know that story.
I think
That was a casino night.
Yep.
It was
like,
like
I
one
know
of his
it is.
events. That's how we.
okay.
Yeah.
So you all need a story.
Yes.
But it's so it's very like touching, you know, that
Yeah.
Oh,
if,
yes.
if you can, I mean, and this goes for everything, not just coming out or the LGBTQ space, but everything. If you can make a difference in somebody's life,
Oh, yeah.
then I think you're on the right track. And I think, I mean, you guys are already seeing the fruits of what started as an idea, and as maybe to you guys it was something fun to do as friends, and for you to see all the fruits that it's having and
Yeah.
making an impact in the community, I think that's huge. And I
Yeah,
think you're on
it
the
was
right
very
track.
intentional. We were
Right,
very
from the
intentional from the
beginning.
beginning of every piece of the topics we're discussing, about what we're posting on social media. There are certain things that, because our social media clips obviously are much, they reach more people than our full episodes.
Okay.
And so there are pieces that we don't specifically put on that are viral moments that we
Right.
specifically don't put on that, because they need the full context, and they need these stories need the moment and the full kind of like experience to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
we're very intentional about everything that we
That's
do.
good.
I'm probably too much. Jake's probably like, oh my gosh, because we approve everything with each other,
Right.
and we're very intentional about like, I want to make sure that you're comfortable with this, and I'm comfortable with this, and that we're because these stories are incredibly personal to us, and they mean a lot to us.
Right.
And we knew by doing this that we were going to have to reveal some of this, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
obviously, just kind of orchestrating it. Orchestrating is probably a bad word, but yeah, I think we're being intentional about our brand and what it
Yes.
means
The
and
impact
how
that
we
you're
help people.
having.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so obviously you're both Latino men. Do you see a huge need for, I mean, obviously you did, right? Because you started this, but how big is the Latino gay community in our area in San Antonio, based on y'all's experience? And two, how much of a need is there for these kinds of support groups, for these kinds of stories, so that they feel like they're part of something?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think we're talking about two communities, like you said at the beginning, are political, and I don't want to get into
Right.
politics, but I think you have to,
Right.
in
Yeah.
a way. I think it's two communities that are being
Targeted.
Thank you, very much so.
Yeah.
And so, what is y'all's experience as two Latino gay men in the San Antonio area specifically, because this is where our community is? What
Yeah.
is the need?
Yeah, when you think about it, I don't know if anybody has sort of direct facts, but I think 12% of Latinos in the U.S. Identify as LGBTQ.
Okay.
So you can, probably say that that's probably similar here in San Antonio. But just like everything else, the opportunities and disadvantages vary by where you live. And just like San Antonio is economically disadvantaged as a community, that is exemplified within the LGBTQ community. So if you think of, the gay population in Austin is very different than the gay population here in San Antonio. What do I mean by that? I mean that what you see in Austin as an education level, as access to resources, of income, those things are much higher in a place like Austin than they are here. But if you think about the LGBTQ community, those things are exemplified, right? Because think about healthcare, access to healthcare, which is a lot that Jake does. And economic opportunities, jobs, all of those things, those gaps get wider when it comes to our community. So the need is obviously there. And I think a lot of folks don't know where to ask and ask these questions. And so we're not trying to sort of boil the ocean here, but at least we're starting conversations and getting people talking about these things. Because if you think about any of the normal disadvantages that you would see in a community, you have to multiply that, because we're not just talking about the gay community, we're talking about the Latino gay community. Yeah. So those things. And I think as an example of that, a big thing that affects our community is HIV/AIDS. And HIV/AIDS, the rates of HIV/AIDS are declining significantly across the board by the LGBTQ community. But the Latino community is rising in rates. So you're seeing that, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Education, stigma that come with that. And Jake, correct me, this is your space more than it is mine.
You're right.
But stigma, education, even the newer populations, the immigrant populations, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Latino immigrants that are the very fabric of this community here in San Antonio. Yep. But those sort of disadvantages are everywhere. So that's something we're going to be talking about a lot as it progresses, because I think a lot of people don't know that, right? If you think about just as the example that I use, HIV/AIDS, you're like, that's something of the past, but for our community, it's not. And it's continuing to exemplify because of the access to healthcare and the access to education that we're seeing in other parts of the community.
So Jake, do you see, I'm assuming it's both, but do you see a problem in the access to health care, or do you see a problem in the education behind knowing that those resources are available? Or is it kind of a combination of both?
So it's both of those, but also what's even more, what's the word? What exacerbates it more is the trauma behind healthcare and LGBTQ communities. So, and it happens for basically all disenfranchised groups. So when you think about like the father of OBGYN, right? Like he was literally taking Black women and basically using them as subjects because they were Black. And it's like, so that creates a crack in the healthcare system as it relates to the trust that Black women have with healthcare. Gotcha. Then you see it in maternal mortality rates across the nation for sure. Yeah.
But we're number one.
Texas
is number one.
Texas is number one. But similarly, like as it relates to the LGBTQ community, as Kendrick was mentioning, like it is. I'm very passionate when it comes to that. Like I literally help.
I was gonna say, I hope you say this. I hope you plug that you are actually part of the solution here.
Yeah. So 2023, me and my colleague, we actually built a clinic from the ground up. I was given the opportunity from our senior leaders where I work to open a clinic that was it was basically HIV management and treatment specific. So as a grant individual, I got us a grant. We did the whole thing from like finding the clinic space to like, how does it look inside? We were very intentional, me and my colleague, and my colleague, I call her my work wife, but she's a heterosexual female. And so with both of our minds together, I think we made a fantastic product.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool.
I'm very proud of it.
Where is it at?
So it's on the west side of San Antonio on Culebra and 1604. It's called Apollo Wellness.
Okay.
And so that is my baby, I will say. Like that's the one, it was the funnest project that I probably have done to date in my career, but also was so meaningful. And maybe I think that's where why it was actually so fun, because it was so meaningful. And I was tapped. I will say, I think I was tapped because of who I am. Yeah. But that's okay.
That's when you should be tapping us.
Yes. And I was like, look, I'm not the entire community, but I am part of the community. I'm so happy to do this for the organization that I work at. And it was, the whole reasoning was because we needed to increase access. So when, like as Kendrick mentioned, you know, when as it relates to healthcare metrics, when you look at healthcare metrics in general, like whether it's hypertension, cholesterol, BMI, obesity rates, and then also HIV and all of those things, San Antonio is vastly I'm forgetting the statistical words, but it's just bad. Like it's really detrimental for the community's health is not doing well as it compares to a lot of other communities in and around Texas. But San Antonio, like Texas already has has the worst uninsured rate. It's worse for San Antonio. And then when you throw on, you know, being of the LGBTQ community, even furthermore, it's worse. So like all of these, it's like a domino effect almost. So I'm so proud that I'm able to do something to like work against those, work against the system essentially, to make sure that LGBTQ community individuals, as well as everybody in general, but having that access to care as it relates to sexual health and sexual wellness, and break not only the access to it, but also like breaking the taboo. Like we were very specific on the provider we chose because we needed someone that was going to feel very comfortable literally talking about sex. It is surprisingly, a lot of doctors are not. And so we were very intentional on like who our provider is, because we wanted that individual needs to be extremely comfortable, extremely competent in making the patient feel comfortable. Talk about it as 100%. Well. Cause like I will never, the one thing that like, I'm going to go back actually, as far as like, I was also so proud of this because I have also experienced some, I've experienced discrimination because of who I am as it relates to healthcare. And I'm like, I work in healthcare, right? So like, I noticed it very early on and I was like, okay, well, I'm never coming to you, but I'm going to be coming back to you. But I went to a doctor. I chose this doctor because they were a person of color. So I was like, oh, okay, like cool. Like, you know, we may be able to have like some respect and like, you know, similarities that we lived experiences that we have shared. And surprisingly, I left feeling very like, well, one, I'm never coming back to you, but it's because they told me like, I'm going to give you an HIV test because you're gay. Mm-hmm. And so like little things like that, like was the intent good? Sure. I'll give him that. But like, it's the way that they talk to individuals. Like
he's stereotyped.
Stereotype. He stereotyped me the moment I walked in and I was like, okay, I'm not coming back. But it's like, it's things like that. Like I work in healthcare, so I know I can find somewhere else. Yeah. When that happens to someone who doesn't work in healthcare, in their mind, they may think everybody's going to treat them that way. So then that's when, going back to what I said originally, like the trust in the healthcare system, along with education, along with access, it is all three of those combined is what makes it so hard for individuals of the LGBT community, of other disenfranchised groups, really get the healthcare that they deserve, and that they need in a way that's really accessible, whether it's financially or just like around the corner, you know, whatever accessibility means to that individual. It varies by person, but like they may just forego healthcare for the multitude of reasons of whether it's the trust, education, or the access. And so like, not only was I able to build this clinic, but I have a team member that specifically focuses on the education for the community of like letting them know of the clinic, one, but also like providing education trainings. So on what, you know, literally talking about STIs and like HIV and like, what does it mean? How does it work inside your body?
It's a whole package.
Exactly. Awesome. Yes. So though, like, yeah, I could talk day in and day out, as you can tell,
no, but I think
about
that's
this, but
super needed. And you know, the story you just told reminded me, and I'll tell you a super quick story, but when we moved to the United States when I was 10, and when we first moved, our English was terrible, even worse than right now, right? And and so my mom took me to the doctor because I probably had a cold or something like that. And I used to walk barefoot a lot in our house.
Oh my gosh.
And my mom told the doctor, and this was in New Braunfels, Texas, which I think we were the only Latino at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be very different when we were growing up.
And so my mom decides to tell the doctor, like, do you think it's because, and you know, again, mom, the idea that if you're barefoot, you get sick, right? And so she decides to tell the doctor that. And and I'll never forget this. The doctor told me, you're not in Mexico anymore. You can wear shoes. And at the moment, we didn't do anything about it. Didn't think about it. We were like, maybe take it. Now looking back, it's like, oh my, it like hurts me.
Right.
It makes me so angry. Right. I mean, and it's been many, many years. But the reason why I bring that up, it's the story you said reminded me of that, but it's so much needed to feel that comfort and to feel taken care of and to not be judged from where you are or what your sexual preference is or in the color of your skin, nothing.
Right.
When you go to the doctor, you're looking for a doctor to make you feel safe, to make you feel better. I mean, you're probably going in there because you feel terrible.
Right. Yeah.
So you're looking for somebody to make you feel better. And so I think the spaces like the one you created with your coworker are so much needed in our community. So thank you. I mean, that's awesome.
One thing you left out too is that all their providers speak English and Spanish. Your providers speak Spanish, and because that was something you were really intentional about. Because there were going to be folks that I think, especially here in San Antonio, that speak Spanish as a first language, and they need to feel comfortable as well, and that's important.
Right. Yeah. We want to meet the patient where they're at, not vice versa.
Not the other way around.
Right.
Which it's how it should be.
Yes. But right now, I think the healthcare system is that way. Yeah. Like they need to meet the provider where they're at. And I'm like, that's not how it needs to be.
I agree 100%.
It needs to be the other way around.
And then I do have a question for each one of you. Yeah. If you could give some advice to somebody, maybe a young person that's watching this, or whether it's about the coming out or being a secure gay Latino man, or maybe somebody that wants to start their own podcast and has a great idea. I mean, anything really that you just some advice to somebody that's barely starting and might be struggling with something in their lives. So.
You want to go first?
I'll let you go. I feel like I just talked so much.
Kendrick?
No, you're good. You're good. I can go first. I think for me, I would just say make sure you're having these tough conversations. It's something that we were talking about, even not necessarily tough, but vulnerable conversations.
Yes, yeah.
Find your community. I think the reason why I stay in San Antonio is because this is where I feel most secure. People who are like me, there are plenty of places where I can go and feel comfortable as a gay man. There are plenty of places I can go and feel comfortable as a Latino man, but there are very few places I can go and feel comfortable as a Latino gay man. Yeah. And that's where I found here. So find your community, find your friends, your friend group. And then, when you're able to be that vulnerable, you're able to continue to grow. I know it sounds so cliche, but that's what we have found. And, when it comes to the show itself and to how we even brought this up was because we sort of trusted each other and we built a friendship that we knew that if there was something that we were working on together, that we were going to be able to do it. Now, when it comes to the podcast itself, I can't say that it's easy by any means. You know this. It is.
We all know we're like,
it is a full-time job while we have full-time jobs.
Yes.
Right.
But when you're able to do things that you're really passionate about, and this applies to everything, make sure you have that passion, which is why we kind of sat on the idea for a while, because I was like, I am the kind of person that will focus on something and then I'll like lose focus and it's like, all right, what's next? So I made us sit there for a little bit so that I could make sure that for me that I was something I really wanted to do.
Sure.
And really kind of focus on. So yeah, I think just back to your original point, just make sure that you're having vulnerable conversations, that you're listening to these conversations to where you feel safe. I think safety is a big concern that a lot of folks have. Like, don't just start having vulnerable conversations with anybody, but build that sort of trust with your chosen family, if you will, and sort of go from there.
Yeah. That was perfect. I'm like, I don't know what else to put. Right. Second. Retweet. I think Kendrick was very spot on as far as like finding that safe space and wherever it is. Like the vulnerability aspect is a huge thing also. I know for me specifically, like I don't consider myself very vulnerable. Like it takes a while for me to actually like open up and like just share, right? Yeah. I think the podcast is definitely helping me with that. So that's a huge. I love that it's helping me with that. I know we talked about it earlier. It's also very therapeutic.
It is 100%.
So I'm just like, maybe I don't have to pay my therapist anymore.
Yeah. No,
I'm just
continue
kidding.
going to therapy.
No, my therapist is absolutely sane.
One thing I wanted to add, though, that we talked about before when it comes to that is that a lot of things that we're talking about on the show is because we've already learned and healed from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're not bringing something to the show where we felt from the very beginning that it was, there are certain topics where I'm like, I know the community would love this, but I'm not ready. Or you say you're not ready.
Yeah.
And we feel like it's irresponsible to kind of do that when we haven't had our full sort of experience. And one thing that we are intentional about with the show is that we say everything from our personal experience because, you know, we know that everybody else has their version. But if, like I said before, if you can just take a piece and it's helpful for you, then we've done our goal here.
Yeah. No, and making sure that like, I feel like leading with that, like as an individual, like knowing that I could potentially whatever I talk about, whatever I say, my lived experiences, knowing that it could help even one person drives me. So I would say like holding on to that and really going for it. I think also one of the things, especially I know as you mentioned, like it's a lot of work. We all know that. So, but if whatever it is, whether it's a podcast, whether it's, I don't know, writing
Opening
a
up a
book,
business.
opening a business, like if you know in your heart, like this is what you want to do. And sometimes like for me, it was kind of out of nowhere. Like Kendrick, when we were talking and we were like texting about it, I was like, you know what? Yes. Like, let's do it. And
I was like, it was a breakdown proposal.
I'm going to put it together
before he loses the idea.
Yeah. And like you said, like we didn't just like, it took probably like 2 or 3 months. 3 months before we actually like started like, okay, let's film.
Nice.
But up to that time, like I was like finding more and more reason of like, I want to do this. So I feel like when you have that feeling in your gut and you have that passion or of whatever it is, like I mentioned, go for it. Like really putting your like literally heart and soul. And then that may sound cliche, but like I really feel like wholeheartedly, like if you have that passion, like it's going to be work, but also it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I find so much joy sometimes in like getting home and I'm like, I want to work on the podcast a little bit, or like I want to work on the show a little bit. And like after a full day of work and then coming home and still feeling like energized, like that is really what
awesome.
keeps me going. I would say like when you have that, with whatever it is you want to do, like hold on to it and lead with that.
Yeah. The day we launched we were both so emotional. Remember?
Yes.
We were so emotional because I think I didn't know what to expect and I didn't know what kind of reaction we were going to get. And I told Jake, I said, you know what? I think I remember this. And I'm getting emotional. I cry for everything. So let me brace myself again.
Safe space.
But what I was going to say is that I think a lot of times when people are our age, right, you get to a certain point where unintentionally or intentionally, you stop putting goals for yourself and you stop reaching for the next thing. And I think that's good because then you're able to really enjoy life. But this was the first time in a long time where I was like, this is something that I'm actually vulnerable and scared to do.
Yeah.
It was the scariest thing that I probably have ever had to do.
Yeah.
And try to do because you're releasing something and releasing a product that is so vulnerable to you. And this is our baby. We put a lot of work into this. We put a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of emotion, and you just don't know how people are going to receive it. And I'm so grateful of the way that it's been received. And I hope that it just continues to do it.
I love it. I love it. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Thank you. But yeah, like I said, I think when you get a certain age, you stop making goals for yourself. It's been a reminder for us to be like, your life, especially we're really good about like living. My 30s are my best years yet. I'm like, I'm living. I have it all under control most of the time. But it kind of reminded me that it's okay. You can keep having goals after a certain point.
Keep having passions and following your heart and following the things that really move you. Because I think you're right. I think we get into this routine and, you know, I'm a mom now, as we talked about, and sometimes it's hard. I mean, sometimes it's hard to think about myself. And I mean, that's the whole other thing. But like the mom guilt kicks in. Like, I shouldn't be doing this because I should be with my daughter. And then I go to therapy too. And my therapist is amazing. And she's like, but your daughter wants to have a happy mom. You want to teach your daughter that she can chase her dreams too. And she should chase her passions too. And so speaking of therapy, I think that's I think everybody should go to therapy. I think we all have to go to therapy at some point in our life.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Just plugging that in there.
I think
Please
we-
go to
second
therapy.
that.
we learned that
people.
too with the comments. I'm like, some of y'all are dealing, and it goes back to an access question too. Not everybody can afford therapy,
Right.
and has the access to that, and that's
Yeah.
the part that. And like I said, when you compound being gay with being Latino, those numbers start to grow and grow and
Yeah.
grow, and so. If you have access to it, you should be doing it,
Yes.
100%.
because you're
Yep.
revealing things in there. Like, I think that's what, when we were reading the comments, we're like, I realized how many people just need to talk these things through.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk these things
Yeah.
through, and this is not the space for that. It's the
Right.
place to start, but you should be with professionals that can help you, as we both learn through
No,
our
I
own
think
sort of
it's
therapy journey.
much
Yep.
needed, much
Yes.
needed. And then my last question that I always like to ask my guests is, if you could go back in time when you were a younger self and you could speak to your baby you, I don't know, 6, 7-year-old you, what would you tell him after everything you already know? Like, if, with the knowledge that you have now, what advice, or what did you need to hear from yourself at that point in time?
Yeah, we're laughing because we did this exact segment in our last episode.
Nice.
So if you look at our growing up but gay episode, we talk specifically about this. Except we put pictures of ourselves in front of us to make us more emotional.
Oh, my
I know, we're like,
goodness.
We put
Why
baby
do
pictures.
this?
Like, what would you tell baby Jake? But you want to go first?
Yeah, I think for me, and I mentioned it on the show, like I would literally, and this is gonna sound almost like cliche / like just like normal. I don't know why I think that word, but like everything is going to be okay. I think early on, and we dive into it like on the show, like early on, I knew something was different about myself. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't like. I was very privileged to be able to like be a child and not really know what that different meant.
Okay.
But once it started to kick in and like I was like, oh, this is what it is. Sure. It was pretty rough, like internalizing it sometimes and things of that nature. And then of course, like with my coming out, like I was so nervous for my parents. And like, if I could just tell myself like, it will be okay, I think that would have helped me tremendously. And it would have helped me tremendously today. That's definitely one of the things, but also this is something new, and I think I recently realized it. Like just knowing that my mom is proud of me.
Yeah.
I say that just because there are times where like that's what I want. That's what I want, because I know like she's the one that motivates me. Like growing up, she was always the one like, you need to have all A's and all everything needs to be perfect. I've now know that that's not necessarily true, but I think when like knowing that would have like, right, like not being told like, why do you have a B? But like on a progress report at that, but like just being like her saying like, oh, I'm proud of you. Like when you get all A's, like could have helped me a lot, like mentally now as an adult. I feel like I'm super hard on myself. And sometimes I'm like, I don't need to be that hard on myself, but I think just remembering that and like telling myself early on, like it is true.
I love that. I love that. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
And for me, mine actually is different than the one that I mentioned on the show. Both of ours were different than the one we mentioned on the show, because we're learning so much as this is happening and we're growing.
I love that.
And I think for me, I would just tell myself, I spent a lot of time when I was younger I'm very goal oriented, and I had very specific goals, and I would achieve everything so that people wouldn't look at who I really was as a person and see me as the gay man that I am. And so I think I would just tell myself that you can still have everything you've ever wanted and still be happy exactly who you are, the way you are. And I think because there was a long time, it's taken a lot for me to kind of say that. Now I'm fully there, but I wish that I would have 33 years of that sort of mentality instead of 9 years of that mentality, right? And so that's what I would tell myself, is that you can still have everything you've ever wanted, and in the way that fits you, but you can also be proud of being a gay man. I know that's something that I am too.
I love that. I love that. That's beautiful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you both so much for sharing. I loved it. Thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you for the wonderful space that you've created for the Latino gay community, and for everybody. I'm
Yeah.
Latino.
Everybody's
I'm not
learning.
gay or a man, but
But you're a mom,
right?
You're a friend,
Yeah,
you're
I
a
love
coworker.
it. I love it.
Those are all things that are
Yes.
applicable to you.
Yeah,
So,
so thank you so much, really. Is there anything else that y'all want to share with the community? Anything else you want? Please repeat one more time where people can listen to you, where they
Yeah.
can find you, and anything else that you want to
My
share.
media training says you never say nothing else. You always hit it in with a call to action. And my call to action is just, share it with somebody that share our show. You can find us on all social media platforms at JK But Gay, but anywhere you listen or view, so YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you can find us at JK But Gay. Reach out to us if you have any podcast questions. I told you this before the show started.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to kind of help everybody, but even if this sort of topic isn't applicable to you, you probably know somebody that it is applicable for.
Sure.
Right.
So share that information with them. Reach out to us, and we're sort of happy to help. But anything you want to add?
No, you did perfect. And I will say you, Mariana, like one of the things that I'm like in awe of, I'm like, you're doing this show. You have a child. You have a full-time job.
By
I'm like,
yourself.
oh
my gosh.
Super mom over here.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Because I wouldn't do it myself.
Me either.
Nope.
I'm like, the amount of work that like goes into this,
It's a lot of work.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
So
And how much I get to lean on you, and you get to lean
Right.
on me. Like,
I'm like, I can't do this today.
thank you.
Here you
no,
go.
yeah. So thank you for the space, and thank you for
Yes.
inviting us.
Of
This has
course.
been
Yes.
amazing.
Thank
Y'all
you
are
so
welcome
much.
to come back anytime. It was
Thank
great
you.
meeting you
Yes.
officially. And
Yes.
seeing you like always. So thank you so much for coming. And again, thank you for the wonderful space that you're creating. And I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things that are going to come out of the JK But Gay show. So
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching Momentos and Voices. We'll see you next time at our next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.